Hey guys. How are you? Hello everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you Eleanor. Thank you Margaret. Edward. How is everyone doing on this fine Easter Sunday afternoon or evening, morning? Hey everyone. Hi Nathaniel, Katrina, Cheryl. We're here with some of our rescued fruit bats. Right in front of me are two of our African fruit bats. And they're enjoying some yummy melon treats. Hello. Nathaniel asked if we can come by tonight or if this is only streaming. Yes, so we are only streaming. We actually don't allow visitors of any kind at the sanctuary, which is why we do stuff like this, to allow people to get a closer look at what we do at the sanctuary and some of the animals. Renee says, had a great day. I love to hear that. Tom says, introducing my girlfriend Denise to your page, and we appreciate that so much. Thank you guys. Honestly, sharing what I like to call the gospel of the bats is the best way to get people to fall in love with them and have way more people start protecting them. Hi, Robin. Hi, Nina. Hi, Jessie. Carrie. Thank you guys for tuning in today. Stephanie says their faces are so cute, and I agree. This is why a lot of people call them sky puppies, especially the fruit bats. They have an elongated snout because they eat lots. Oh, I just dropped that tree. I am so sorry. Here's another one. They eat lots of yummy fruit. We don't have any nectivorous fruit bats, but those have an even longer snout, since they'll dip their nose and their super long tongues into flowers to eat nectar. And if anyone has any questions at any point, please send them in the comments. I don't ever pretend to know everything, but those things that I don't know, it gives me an opportunity to ask an adultier adult, so I learn as well. Katrina says, I'm sharing the bat gospel with my husband tonight. We love that. And I have someone who's wearing their Statler shirt today. That's amazing. See, I don't even have a Statler shirt. I have a couple different ones, but not the Statler shirt. So I'm actually stepping out right now to show you guys our outdoor enclosures, since we don't usually get a chance to see it when it's bright outside. It's usually super, super dark. This is a semi-outdoor flight enclosure. These bay doors, they'll be opened up here in a little bit since it's gonna be nice outside tonight. But it was super hot here in Texas, so that's why we closed it so it didn't get extreme, because I think it was in the 90s, or at least it felt like it. I was in the garden and Jesus, it was rough. But yeah, here in just a second, because we have skylights, whenever it starts getting darker, they'll start coming outside and flying around. And it feels like a wind turbine. Carrie asks, what is their favorite food? They have a couple of different ones. For our fruit bats here at the sanctuary, it usually tends to be melon, especially super ripe melon like we're holding right here. That's their favorite, especially honeydew. Cantaloupe is also another one. They do sometimes eat watermelon, but they prefer the honeydew and cantaloupe. We've also tried papaya. That one, it's a hit or miss. They like it for like a couple of days, and then they're like, never mind. We have about 5 different species here in the fruit bat enclosure. We have the Egyptian fruit bats, which is like this little guy right in front of me. We have our African fruit bats, like you. And these are the most common in all of Africa, hence the name. I think I have Crinkles, who's also an African fruit bat, who's yelling back here, "Hi, Crinkles! I could hear you from halfway across the enclosure." Would you like a melon? Here you go. We also have our Indian flying fox, the captain, who was rescued from a zoo where they no longer could keep him, so he is staying here. Up top, we have a couple of Jamaican fruit bats, which are some of my personal favorites. They are native to parts of Central and South America. They have a super cute nose leaf. Here's another one of those Egyptians. Hi. And I'm looking for a short-tailed fruit bat, but those are the really small, fast ones who, if you're just looking out in the distance, majority of those are the smaller ones. I did see a question or two come in, so I'm scrolling back. Do they bond with each other? That was asked by Victoria. Yes. So that is something that we actually stress a lot for those who just don't really know a whole lot about bats, because bats, especially Egyptian fruit bats, tend to live in colonies numbering in the thousands. For Mexican freetails, that can go up to the millions. And they form lifelong bonds with one another, which whenever they're broken, that can lead them to depression and heartbreak. And they can literally die from that. And that's why they don't last very long in the pet trade, since people tend to isolate them into small, tiny cages, keep them by themselves, isolated for most of their lives. So they either die of malnourishment or, number one, depression, which I don't know about y'all, but that like breaks my heart to even think about. But yeah, they form bonds with each other. Especially once they've, actually I don't know where he's at right now, but you might be able to see him here in a second. We just got a fruit bat. His name is Batty, and he is darling. He's an Egyptian fruit bat. He came from a zoo situation where he had friends once upon a time, but slowly but surely they all started passing away. And that zoo realized that they couldn't keep a single bat in captivity all on their own. It's just cruel. And so Batty is here with us now, and we did share him on social media once he got here, but he's made lots of friends since then. He hangs out at the heart of the colony each and every day. So he went from having 0 friends for a while to now having over 100 of his own kind and about 400 fruit bats total. So it's really nice to see that he's growing and easily making friends here at the sanctuary. Katrina asks, how old do they get? It depends on the species. So they can go anywhere from 15 to 25 plus years typically in the wild, but they can get much older in captivity. For example, Statler. I saw someone had a Statler t-shirt on. Statler was our old flying fox man, and he lived to be 34 years old. So he was pretty dang old. We have some Jamaican fruit bats who we're actually going to visit. Here, I'm going to give you a treat before I walk away because you came all this way. Here you go, babe. You would not like a treat? Okay, that's fine. You'll take it? All right. We're actually going to visit our really old Jamaican fruit bats in our geriatric enclosure. Most of these guys were rescued back in the 90s, and I was just getting my stool because I am vertically challenged. I'm barely 5 feet tall, y'all. So some of our Jamaican fruit bats back here were rescued back in the 90s from DNA research. So some of these guys are hitting 30 years old. And for bats, that is pretty dang old, but they can get to be that old. I think the record for bats in general is in the 40s. I think 42 ended up being the oldest bat on record that we know of in the wild. Robin says Coco taught her well, and yeah. So for those of you guys who are relatively new to our live streams, number one, welcome. And number two, we used to have a super sweet bat named Coco, who as soon as we came into the enclosure at nighttime, he would start screaming because he would know that he was about to get treats. And that was his really good way of getting our attention. And so he has taught a couple of his friends, like Crinkles, how to do the same exact thing. Coco had gotten really, really old, and that's why we stopped invading his privacy, essentially, to do live streams. Because at first he loved to be on camera, and he would scream at us to get his treats. But as time passed and he started to get a little bit older, we just started to give him a little bit more privacy, just because he got old, little old man. But he did pass while hugging one of his friends, which is like literally whenever that happened, it was just everyone was in tears, and it was horrible because he was such a huge part of the sanctuary. But you know, he passed with his friends, and we were able to at least give him a good rest of his life here at the sanctuary. And yeah, Stephanie says, wow, 40. Yes, they can live a very, very long time. Which is also another thing that I like to just teach people whenever I spread the bat gospel, because they often relate bats to rodents, which is absolutely erroneous. Rodents don't really live quite as long. Rats can live somewhere around 2 years or so. Hey guys, we got a couple more of those Jamaicans. Hi. And they have lots and lots of babies. And bats, on the other hand, only live, well, they do live to be sometimes 30 years old, and they only have one pup per year. Hello, little guy. Some of our older guys like to just plop down and receive food from the ground. This is actually why we have this food at the bottom. For the rest of the enclosure, we have food hanging from different areas, but for our older guys, we give them options. They have bowls, this hanging basket, this is melon here at the bottom, grapes, lettuce, and they have a little bit of food here at the bottom as well, for those that like to just let go, because just like older people, they can get arthritis, and that way they can just hang out on the ground and eat. But they do have various options. And I'm scrolling back. I promise I am getting to everyone's questions. Lisa says, I got bat house directions and with catcher instructions. Yes, thank you for the pup catcher. Pup catchers are super, super important if you're installing a bat house. Thank you so much for that, Lisa. And Vanessa says, thank you for showing the captain. He should be coming back out soon. I actually had to go into his roost to go see him real quick. But he usually comes and hangs out over here. But it's summertime and the sun is taking a little bit longer to go down, but this is his favorite hangout spot because he has all of these treat puzzles, which one of our African fruit bats is getting to right now. And these over here that are filled with melon, they're little cups. He has more of there. So he kind of just takes over this spot and eats all of the treats. Wendy asks an amazing question. Do bats migrate like birds? Yes. Not all bats migrate. That's really important. Our fruit bats, for example, a lot of them do not because they live in tropical areas where they don't have to constantly chase the insect population or fly away from frigid temperatures. But here in Texas, we have a really good example. The Mexican free-tailed bat. They are called Mexican free-tails because they migrate to Mexico and other parts of Central America in order to evade the cold temperatures and chase the insect supply whenever it gets too cold here. They migrate hundreds and hundreds and just many, many, many miles every single year. They come back to Texas as their summer home. And they roost in caves, older buildings, like here in Mineral Wells. I'm actually going to get some more lettuce over here for these girls. My girls, Ella, this is really hard to do with one hand, y'all. Yep, that's not going to happen. Oh, I'm getting it. All right. It can be done. All right. So yes, they do migrate, especially those insectivorous bats. Those that don't migrate here in the US, they do typically hibernate. So we do have a couple of those as well. Then we have species like the red bat who can kind of choose to do either or. They can migrate or they can hibernate. But red bats are a foliage roosting species. They're a little bit different from the Mexican freetails. They're actually a little bit more primitive is not the best word to use for them because they are extremely intelligent. But in comparison to the freetails, they're a little bit more primitive. Is there such a thing as a vampire bat? Yes. Now there are 1,400, or actually more like 1,450, 1,400 species of bats all around the world, and only 3 out of those 1,400 species are considered vampires. They do not live in the US, they live in parts of Central America and South America. The closest one to us, I think, is like about 300 miles or so. I might be off on that number, so please do not quote me on that one. From the Texas-Mexico border. Now they do require warmer climates, so they will not be found here in the US. Some people try to scare, try to like fearmonger. Hi, Captain. Just to, I really don't know why. I wish I could tell you the reason. But people like to instill that fear and say that we're going to have vampire bats coming here to Texas, you know, run, hide, they're coming. I highly doubt that is ever going to happen in our foreseeable future, because unless Texas has consistently warm temperatures, which if you live in Texas or if you've ever been here, you know that that is far from what actually happens. It goes from freezing one day and then the next day to like 90 degrees. Unless it's consistent and warm, we're just not going to have vampire bats. Now they are extremely tiny and they're super cute. I do encourage everyone to find a picture of them because I love them. They have like little smushed faces, almost like pugs. And they do not attack humans. They don't want us. They do, however, go for cattle and chickens. And they have an anticoagulant in their saliva, which allows them to take tiny, tiny sips of blood. They are strictly sanguivorous. And that enzyme that they use is called draculin. And we use it in life-saving medicines to save stroke patients. So, hi. So that anticoagulant is actually used by people. So vampire bats are actually really helpful to us. But there's only 3 species. Tiffany says, watching with my 9-year-old who wants to be a bat biologist. He says he just can't love this enough. I love that. I actually do a couple of educational programs for kiddos. And so, because I am the education director here at Bat World Sanctuary, and it's my favorite whenever I see kids get excited over bats. Because, I mean, they're our future, man. If anyone's gonna protect them, it's gonna be them. Christopher asks a very important question. Do bats let you touch their noses? Typically, no, unless I'm giving out a treat and I accidentally just graze past their nose. They don't really like anything being shoved in their face, just like people. I sometimes wish I could, because I wish I could sneak a touch of one of those Jamaican fruit bats' leaf nose, their leaf nose. They're so cute. But yeah, they don't love it, so we don't bug them. I'm scrolling back to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Michelle said very small amounts, and yes, exactly. Vampire bats drink a tiny, tiny amount of blood from their prey. It's kind of similar to a mosquito. They don't need to, stick their teeth into your jugular and completely suck you dry. That's not how that works. They use that anticoagulant to take tiny, tiny amounts. And they themselves are extremely small. Abby says, or asks, do they grieve for one another? Did it bother Coco's friend that he passed holding on to them? From what I see, I do think that they can and do grieve for one another. Hey! So we see examples of that, like for example with Coco's passing. And the best way I can explain it is if you've ever owned like 2 dogs and they were best friends and one of them passes, you can tell when that other dog just senses the one that passed their absence. And it's kind of the same way for bats. They start acting differently. They can become depressed. Thankfully, they have a strong network of friendships with other bats. And whenever we do have that effect, it doesn't affect them quite as much, and it's not so debilitating. So that was the case with Coco's friend. We did see a little bit of sadness, of course, but like Crinkles, for example. I wonder if Crinkles is still back here. She doesn't move around too much if she doesn't have to. She's also a very old lady. Oh no, you know what? Crinkles, I am talking smack about you and you're already moving around. Sweet old girl. Yep, she's already left her spot. But yeah, Coco's been doing well. She's actually really good friends with Vicious, and they have been keeping each other company. I'm just scrolling through questions. Vicky says Happy Easter, and Happy Easter to everyone. I hope everyone had a wonderful day filled with fun events, hanging out with family. Sheila asks, the bats don't really like to be handled, do they? And they do not. Very seldomly, we will find an exception, like Chessie, who did enjoy getting her little back scratches, Statler, who enjoyed being held by his caretaker, but in general, most of our bats are still relatively wild. They do not want to be held, and even the ones that we have to hand feed every single day, they tolerate us for the amount of time that we hand feed them. And then they decide, no more. It's time to go back to bed. Thanks. And they let us know when they're ready to go back. Our hand feeders, they start kicking their feet and becoming kind of antsy. How many bats are in the sanctuary? So here in the fruit bat enclosure, I'm going to take a step back so we can take it all in. So this is the fruit bat enclosure. It is about 3,000 square feet of flight space, both indoor and outdoor. We have about, I think it's, the number's at 350 fruit bats, and we have about 400 bats total. The rest of them are not fruit bats, they are native insectivorous bats. That number constantly fluctuates a bit just because our native bats, we rescue them, we try to give them some love, TLC, hydration, and some food, medicine whenever necessary, and if they can be released, they are released as soon as possible back into the wild. For those who suffer wing injuries or have some kind of deformity where they cannot be released back into the wild, those native insectivorous bats will remain here at the sanctuary. So that number is constantly growing, but depending on how many rescues we have in here at a time, that number will fluctuate, but generally about 400 right now. Joanne had asked, why is it red inside? Is it for their vision? And Robin actually answered that question and did so beautifully. Thank you. Our bats can, or our fruit bats, I should say, cannot see red all that well, so it doesn't bother them. It's a little bit easier for them to deal with during the nighttime because it doesn't really affect them. They don't notice it. But me as the caretaker, I can still see, so I make sure I don't step on anyone or run into things that I shouldn't. So it helps me, and it also just doesn't bother them. Angela asks, how big is your sanctuary? The whole building, I am not quite sure, but our fruit bat enclosure is about 3,000 square feet. Our insect bat enclosure is a little bit smaller, and remember whenever I said that I don't know all the answers? That is one. So I will actually find out tomorrow, first thing in the morning, and I will try to answer that in the comments for you, just because I can't remember how big our insect bat enclosure is. It is a little bit smaller since most of the guys in there do not fly. It does have a little bit of flight space in there for them, but we don't have quite as many, and most of them have wing injuries, which makes them non-releasable, and they do not fly. But let me get that answer tomorrow, and I will actually type it in the comments. Thank you for challenging my knowledge. Stephanie asked, was Coco ill? No, Coco was actually doing perfectly fine. It was really just old age. He was a little old man. Bats can live 15, 25 years or so, and he was at about that range. Vicky asked, how is Starley doing? Well, let's go see her. Starley, you have someone asking about you. Rightfully so, because you were heckin' gorgeous. Sweet thing. So in our geriatric enclosure, we have Miss Ella and Starley, who snuggle and cuddle all day long. This one right here, our African fruit bat. Ooh, that my words just like merged together there. African fruit bat is Ella, and snuggling on top of her is Miss Starley. Starley, Ella, you already got one, and this one's for Starley. Starley's too busy snuggling. Sweet girl. Okay, well, I guess Ella stole that one too. Starley, would you care for a treat? Num num num. Yeah, so Starley is about 26 years old. It sucks that we can't really see it well in the red light, but she has little gray whiskers on her snout. She's a little old lady. But that's why she hangs out in the geriatric enclosure. Our geriatric enclosure is a little bit smaller, and it does have lots of padding so that if there were ever to be a fall, because these guys are prone to arthritis and falling, they would not be injured. So that's why they are in here rather than being in the main enclosure where it's a much bigger fall. But even then, because we don't want anyone getting hurt ever, our floors are gymnasium style. So they are also padded, as if you were like at a gymnasium, and they have sheets on top of that. So those are padded, but these are extra padded. Lena asked, why do they hang upside down? Well, if you are a bat and let's say you are in a cave, the easiest way to just directly take off into flight is by dropping down. So if you hang upside down like this awesome African fruit bat, you would just let go and release, and you would automatically be in flight. So it's just a really efficient way that bats have figured out. Hey, sweet thing. So since they figured out that method and it's helped them survive, they have kept it. Lori asked, how many babies have you had there? We typically don't have a whole lot of babies. And that's just because anytime that we rescue a fruit bat, especially, they are neutered right away because they're non-native. We're not trying to make more babies. If anything, we need more room to continue to rescue babies, especially since they are being bred in the pet trade and in zoos. And once they have no more use for them, especially like in zoos, you're both gonna get treats, excuse me. Bats do squabble, and that's about as intense as it gets. It's like a 1 to 2 second, hey, get out of my way, you're in my bubble. And then they move on about their day, which is part of why it's so important to have a large enclosure space so they can walk away from squabbles. We also have lots of food all around the enclosure so that there's never food competition. If anything, there's way too much food in here. There's so much extra in the morning, but we do compost here at the sanctuary. But that way there's never any food competition. What is the annual upkeep cost for one of your residents? I can't say the exact number for one single resident, but our total cost is altogether in our annual report. It is different from year to year, and I can't remember the exact number. Again, awesome questions, you guys. Thank you. So I will look at that number tomorrow, first thing in the morning, because it is in our magazine, and I will post it for you because it's a pretty high number just to keep this place running. And why that's really important for everyone to know is that we are not by any means government or federally funded. We are strictly funded through the generosity of our donors. And And so that's how we are able to stay afloat and continue to save more bats from out in the wild to zoos, the pet trade, and research. Tiffany says, we just sent some stuffed animals. It's neat to see how you use them. Ah, yes. Thank you so much for that. So we are wanting to kind of update their stuffed animals because they love that enrichment, and changing them out every so often is really good for them. So stuffed animals like this, we hang them around the enclosure, and especially our Egyptian fruit bats, they love to just hang on them. Our Jerry Batrix love the smaller plushies, and they'll even just snuggle with them all day long. But yeah, they get put all around the enclosure, along with other treat puzzles and such. There's also one of my favorites, this little ball, which this guy loves to hang out at. It's my favorite. Someone says Starley looks great for 26. I agree. She's just heckin' adorable. Are bats affected by cold temperatures? Are there bats in the Arctic or Antarctic environments? They are affected by cold temperature, and that's why some bats have that ability to migrate long distances or hibernate. They will not fly in temperatures below about 50 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit. They require really high body temperatures in order to continue that flight. Flight takes a lot of energy, so they can reach really high body temperatures, and they can't do so in 40 to 50 degree Fahrenheit. Stephanie says it must be costly to stay afloat. Yes. Most of it goes straight to food and just like it literally keeping the lights on for these guys. Oh, Wendy came in clutch. Thank you so much. So the cost of staying and, just functioning in 2021 was $669,955.80 in 2021. And we are very meticulous about keeping track of all of the costs. So for anyone that does have a magazine, that should be in your first or second page of the magazine, and it is broken down into where that money goes, all of the projects that we do. So thank you so much, Wendy. You are the bomb.com. And Michelle also added you can choose to support on Amazon Smile donations. Yes, that is the easiest and just most efficient way of helping us out, because it doesn't cost you a cent. Anytime that you shop through Amazon, if you choose us as your Amazon Smile organization to support, we get a percentage of whatever you're already spending on Amazon. So it doesn't cost you anything extra. And that has helped us cover food costs for an entire month before. So huge way to support us without even really doing an extra thing. Carol asked, do you wear a mask in the enclosure? We do not. So most diseases that bats can transmit to humans are going to be those in the wild. And even then, it hardly ever happens. Most people do have a fear of coronavirus, for example, catching it from a bat, but there has never, not once, been a recorded example of a bat transmitting coronavirus to a person. I do believe, if I have it correct, they think it was a pangolin. A bat gave it to a pangolin, gave it to a human, and even then it was because they were put in conditions like a wet market, where disease just spreads super easily. So no, we do not wear masks in here. You just spit out your piece of lettuce for the melon. All right. We do, however, anytime we work with the insect bats, wash our hands really well before we come in to work with the fruit bats, because between those two, they can spread disease back and forth. So yes, anytime we go from there to here, we do wash our hands really well. But from bat to human, it is highly unlikely, so we do not. Abby asked, if the bats take a tumble, are they able to take off from the floor? Some of them can, but a lot of them cannot. So what they will do, and this is a really good question, thank you so much for that, if they were to fall on the floor, they would hop on over towards the wall. And let's actually crouch down over here. Over here on the wall, they would come under the plastic, and this mesh allows them to climb all the way back up. So we give them that freedom to essentially take care of themselves, because otherwise, if they were to fall, they would have to wait until the next morning to then be picked up by a caretaker. So most of them know already, if you are ever to fall, you go to the wall and you climb all the way back up, and this is also mesh, and they can take that all the way up to the ceiling. So we give them that independence. Even Bionica, who is a one-armed amputee, she can do it all on her own. Now, if she knows that there is a caretaker here available, she will just give up on life and decide that she does not remember how to use the wall. But we have seen her do it, and she knows how to do it very efficiently. But if she knows that you're here, she will just wait until someone comes and helps her. Stephanie asked, do you leave the lights on all night long? We do not. So actually, as soon as I'm done in here, I will turn off these red lights because they're only for my use. And while they do not affect the fruit bats, the insect bats can see the red light, and they will not come out and fly within their enclosure if the red lights are on. Stephanie says, did I hear you correct? Over 600K? Yes, that was just in 2021 alone. And I'm just scrolling through for you guys. You guys are wearing amazing. You guys are. Sorry, somebody said wear gloves, and I was reading and talking at the same time. You guys are asking amazing questions. Stephanie asked, "You don't wear gloves? Wouldn't it be easier?" Yes. So right now, I'm not wearing gloves because I'm not dealing with anything too dirty. Just the melon treats. But whenever we come in the morning, which tomorrow morning I will be in here in the fruit bat enclosure, I do usually wear gloves whenever I first come in, because while this floor looks relatively clean, in the morning it'll be completely trashed, because fruit bats, they do not chew their food completely. They'll usually take the fruit, chew until all of the yummy juice comes out, and then they'll spit out the pulp for me to clean up the next morning. So during that cleanup, I do wear gloves because yes, it is a lot easier. But at nighttime, we don't wear gloves. And also when dealing with the insectivorous bats, sometimes it is actually better to not wear gloves, because with them being so small, it allows a little bit more, hi Sarah, a better tactile sensitivity. That way we can feel if anyone is ever injured, or if we're feeding them, we know a lot easier if they are full. Yeah, Sarah is one of my favorites. She is super charismatic. She's super bold, because most of the Egyptians don't really like to hang around people, but she'll hang around with the African fruit bats, and she will ask for treats. And when you don't notice her right away, she will make sure that you do, because she'll start flapping her wings at you incessantly until she gets a treat. And she'll probably do so here in a second. Sarah, is there something I can help you with? You're still eating your last treat. I see you licking still. Oh, and there goes the pulp that she threw to the ground. Lori asked, what are bats' natural predators? They have a couple. The main one, if we can use the word predator, I would say humans. One, because there are people out there that will eat bats. Not most people, but it happens. One, humans were also the main cause for their demise by taking away habitats and really just being horrible people that we are. Also, white nose syndrome, which has been decimating bats all across the US, is spread mostly through human interaction, because we go into caves with our equipment and our boots, and then we go into new caves that are not affected and bring that fungus with us. So humans is number one. Owls is another. Hawks, snakes, even other bats. It's a very small percentage, less than 1%, but there are carnivorous bats that eat fish, frogs, and even other bats. Stephanie asked, do you leave some form of nightlight when they sleep? I guess you could say kind of. So we do turn off the red lights because they do affect the insect bats, but we have little string lights which we leave on all the time because they're not very bright. They're these right here. I really like them. So while they're not super helpful, and if I am going to come in here to do anything, I will put on my red lamp, which I have on right now, and I'll turn on the red lights just to keep everyone safe so I don't step on anyone if they were ever to fall. We do have those on, but I do turn on the red light whenever I need it. But really great question. Stephanie says Sarah seems to be quite hungry. Girl, she has so much food around the enclosure. She just likes to chase me down for the melon. That is what she wants. Nina asks, do you have a veterinarian on staff? Not on staff, and we do most of our procedures on our own if they are simple procedures. There's Bishes. Bishes likes to, oh, there we go, likes to unhinge her jaw whenever she takes a treat. She gets very, very excited. She has zero manners. I love her so much. We don't have a veterinarian on staff. However, we do have one that is very close by and will come to us at the drop of a hat. And he does most of our neuters or other procedures that are a little bit more difficult to do. And anytime we have a vet type question, he's always there. We can just text him and he's very, very responsive. I believe he's actually on our volunteer page. His name is Tad, and he's amazing. There goes more of that pulp on the ground. Oh, all right. Vicious? Oh goodness. She just like grabbed my entire hand. Yeah, Vicious has zero manners. Absolutely none. But we love her, so it's okay. We went out to the outdoor flight enclosure when we first started the live stream. And there was no one outside because it was still pretty bright. But as you can see, now they're all flying out here. It's mostly the Egyptian fruit bats. One of my favorite parts of the outdoor enclosure is this obstacle course that we have created. It's not much of an obstacle, but they essentially can fly between these vines and try to avoid them. And it's fun. Do the bats have favorite foods? And do bats ever have allergies or food intolerances? Their favorite food is probably the honeydew melon, for sure. And they can have intolerances. Hi, Crinkles. How you doing, sweet girl? There you go. So they... one thing they're sensitive to is iron, for example. Our apple juice that we give them, we have to make sure that it has zero iron in it. Because of our Egyptian fruit bats especially, they don't have a way to get rid of that iron once it's in their system. So it just accumulates over time and it can lead to liver failure. So we have to be really, really careful to choose foods that are not high in iron, and to give them green tea supplements. So if you ever are on our Amazon wish list and you see green tea bags that we have on there, that's what it's for, is to help absorb some of that iron in their diet, so that it doesn't accumulate in their bodies. Carol asks, will they ever land on you? Every so often. However, they are really, really good at avoiding us, because they're just excellent flyers. But they have been known to land on us. I actually have one right now. Let's see if she'll keep coming back, who has been bothering me as I've been walking this way. She's a little short-tailed fruit bat. I'm going to leave my hand out. Hi, there she goes. Because my hands smell like melon, and she knows I have some, so she keeps circling back. Let's see if she'll take one. You're almost there. Now, she probably won't land completely on me. She'll probably just steal a treat and go. Ow, that's my finger. That is not melon. So she tried. She tried to take the melon, but it was my finger instead, because my fingers have so much melon juice in them. I'll just put it here in the bucket and you can come get it from there. How about that? But I am actually getting to the very end of my treats. So with that, I kind of just wanted to say thank you so very much to everyone. And just for joining us today on Easter and taking time away from your day just to join us and, you know, leave your families for a little bit just to hang out with little old me and the rescued fruit bats. Stephanie says, watch out for your fingers. Honestly, yeah. Christopher asks, do they come when they call your name, when you call their names? Not all of them, but some of them do. They can learn to recognize their own names. Peekaboo was the main example of that. She was an Egyptian fruit bat who would respond to her name. But yeah, since I think I have like 2 or 3 more treats, I just wanted to say thank you guys so much for joining us today. I'm glad that we kind of touched on how we make our money, right? And how much it costs to stay afloat, and that it only is possible through you guys and your support. So if you are able, we do have our Amazon wish list online, which helps supply us with things to take care of the bats, as well as plushies for them, enrichment items. So that's super helpful if you're able to give that way. The way that you wouldn't have to spend a penny but would still be super helpful is Amazon Smile. And of course, just donating directly through our website is also a super easy way of doing so. So really, really appreciate you guys. And I hope to do this again very, very soon in the next coming weeks. So please join us soonly. And in the meantime, keep spreading the bat gospel. And have a wonderful night. Thank you, everybody.